podcasts, sometimes they have the Bible in them.
There is a podcast that is all about like gosh, I can't remember what it was called. Griffin Newman was on a episode of it. That it is about like every week they discuss like a Christian popular culture thing, usually from the early mid 2000s.
Oh my god, I know which podcast you're talking about, and I can't remember the name of it.
Searching Christian podcast is going to bring up great results for me. Welcome to Noise Floor, a podcast about music and our favorite artists' discographies. I'm Troy Sennett.
And I'm Matt Kistler.
And today we are doing a bit of an addendum to our Bright Eyes series, talking about a couple of, over the next couple weeks, a couple of Conor Oberst side projects. This one is Monsters of Folk, the supergroup of sorts that Conor assembled circa 2004 or so with Jim James of My Morning Jacket, solo folk artist M. Ward, and Bright Eyes compatriot Mike Mogis. And they released one album on September 22nd, 2009 through Rough Trade. And it was produced by Mike Mogis, again, basically all of Bright Eyes' stuff. And this is kind of a fascinating album, an interesting period in this sort of modern folk music. Matt, was this an album you were looking forward to? Were you excited about it? Tell me your history with the Monsters of Folk.
I remember being really intrigued by this project around the time that it came out. I have almost no history with My Morning Jacket. Sorry, Jim. But I like Z now. That's about as far as I've branched out in the many years since 2009. I like M. Ward's work in She and Him. I haven't delved much into his solo stuff, but obviously having Conor and Mike on an album, I was gonna check it out. I don't feel like this has been a kind of running theme of the last couple of episodes, but I don't remember this making a huge impact on me. I remember checking it out and I think kind of liking it, but not getting super into it. I definitely, upon revisiting, recognized some of these songs, and coming directly out of listening to a bunch of Bright Eyes songs for a extended period of time. I feel like I can identify the more Bright Eyesy moments on this record better than I could back in the day. But yeah, I don't know. It is an odd record, which I'm sure we will get more into. But I think in a way the name of the band kind of maybe set my expectations a little weird. But again, we'll probably dive into that a little more. What about you? Where were you at when this came out?
I mean, it's such a tongue-in-cheek name. It's riffing on the metal Monsters of Rock, Metal Fest. But no, I remember this being announced because I was a Bright Eyes fan at this time, and I was aware of My Morning Jacket at least. But again, similar to you, probably not a huge fan of them. Didn't know who M. Ward was, and I remember. Like I said, I remember this being announced. I remember being kind of excited about it, and then I never listened to it. The first time I had heard this record was this week, and
damn,
yeah, and I agree with you. It's kind of a strange record. It's very collaborative. Every member brings a handful of songs that they kind of sing lead on, but then there's also they're kind of trading verses on a lot of them, and they are. I think there's, some, they don't really say who wrote which songs in the liner notes or anything, because I think there's some that, one member wrote and another member sang lead on, or they kind of just figured out in the studio what worked best for each one. And then live, they would sing each other's songs, which is kind of cool to see in some of the live videos, both each other's Monsters of Folk songs, as well as, trading off parts of their own band's songs when they would play them. So yeah, this album, it didn't really make an impact for me. I don't know that it made much of an impact, culturally. I think fans had kind of a tepid response to it. It looks like it gets decent reviews from a lot of publications. And it charted on peaked at 15 on the Billboard chart. But as far as I could tell from like reading a lot like reactions to it, or at least retrospective reactions to it, it doesn't really hold up for a lot of people. I kind of don't feel like anyone in this band is bringing their best work to it, even though there are some kind of cool moments. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that you kind of get a similar vibe from it?
I do, yeah. There's so like having kind of the artifact of like the deluxe edition and having the rest of the songs as we often do, especially in the context of Bright Eyes. Like we eventually get the B-sides, or we get some of the B-sides before the album, blah blah blah. A lot of the stuff that made the album feels like mildly to moderately unfinished.
Well,
like
the deluxe edition in this case, like those aren't B-sides. That's the second album.
Oh, that's the second album. I didn't realize.
I mean, we can kind of go through the timeline, but like
Sure.
I guess we can go a little bit backwards. So those 5 songs on the deluxe edition are from sessions in 2012 where they were planning to work on a second album.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why those feel very different, and those have Will Johnson from Centromatic playing drums. I believe he's playing drums on those, and he was the live drummer, and they often will introduce him as the fifth monster or whatever. He's kind of an official member of the band. Notably, he
seems like he participated pretty heavily in the live show, like was on vocals a lot and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they play some of his songs at some of the shows. I mean, so are you familiar with Centromatic at all?
Not really, no.
So they're like a Texas kind of alt country band. They were, very toured a lot with Drive By Truckers, Jason Isbell, and the song to a band that I loved on Something More Than Free by Jason Isbell is about Centromatic, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful song. Another weird closer that a lot of critics and fans I know think is like a really down way to end that album, and down isn't like they just don't think it's a strong closer, but I really, really love that song, but that's kind of an aside. We can return to that when we do our Jason Isbell series, inevitably sometime in the future.
Obviously, yeah.
But yeah, so I was kind of looking at, where was everyone in their careers when Monsters of Folk comes together and when this album comes out, because like I said, it's kind of an interesting time for folk music in the, I guess, sort of popular music culture, because like Bright Eyes, so when this band forms in 2004, I think Conor meets Jim James at some festival or something that Bright Eyes and My Morning Jacket were playing, and they were kind of mutually fans of each other and decided they wanted to do some shows or maybe collaborate on something. And Conor suggested bringing in M. Ward, who had toured with Bright Eyes a lot and also had been in the band during the Lifted era for the tour, which I did not know. It's cool.
I also did not know that.
And then Mike Mogis, Conor brings him along, obviously, as a producer and as a general musical contributor. And they took a while to make a record because of all their various commitments. But right around this time is when My Morning Jacket had finished up Evil Urges in 2008, and M. Ward was working on Hold Time, which Mike Mogis was producing and mixing. And this is, around the time that Bright Eyes had gotten huge with I'm Wide Awake It's Morning, that kind of right after the initial shows they played, the Monsters of Folk plays together. And then, by the time they're actually recording in 2008, 2009, Bright Eyes is well known as a folk, a folk Americana band, and then they kind of dive into, obviously we talked about on Casadega what they do with that sound. My Morning Jacket with Evil Urges and Hold Time, and then Wasteland Companion by M. Ward, and also the She and Him Volume 1 was 2008. This is all for all of these artists, this is the peak of their critical and commercial success. And so I think the expectations around that like just fueled the excitement and the challenge of making something cool and interesting as a super group with Monsters of Folk.
Yeah, and which is interesting given that they tried their best to fight against that by just kind of going into these sessions with just no expectations. It kind of sounds like the first sessions at ARC, I believe, I assume.
Yeah.
Were pretty loosey-goosey, it sounds like. Like they just kind of, mics got set up, they would jam stuff out a little bit, Sometimes a song would come out of it. Most of the times the song would come out of it, it sounded like.
Well, yeah, they said they booked 10 days and ended up with 9 songs, which I think is more than they thought they would.
Right, yeah, which honestly, yeah, wild that they would get that many out of that.
They truly seem like they had a ton of fun making this record and promoting this record. The interviews, or like the press tour for this, are some of the silliest I've ever seen any of these guys in any context.
That American Songwriter interview is so fucking goofy. I love it.
God, yeah. And I mean, obviously, because they're a folk supergroup, they are constantly compared to the Traveling Wilburys,
right?
And it's like, oh, who's the Bob Dylan? Who's the Jeff Lynne? Who's the Tom Petty? Like this, a lot of the articles about them, the interviews are kind of talking about this, and they embrace it a little bit, and they also kind of push back against it a little bit. The reading about the sessions for this, I think are really interesting because Mike Mogis talks about it being a much easier record to make than he expected.
Yeah.
And he says something that I thought was really interesting, that they tried to do this in, like, if I'm producing a 3 of the great singer-songwriters of my era or whatever, I would have the same impulse, which was like, what if we just set them in a room and did it all around one mic and see how it would go? You might get kind of the perfect campfire vibe or whatever. And Mike is like, we tried this and it just did not work. Because their voices are so different, or their approaches to singing are so different, that they couldn't do it all on one mic. So they end up kind of picking a different mic for each of them, which you can kind of see in some of the music videos, which I think might be like actual studio session takes of some of those songs.
It sounded like it, yeah.
Yeah, because you can see, I mean, they're also like alt versions because they're singing each other's verses and stuff like that. But I think that's kind of the setup they did a lot of this in. And they said they approached each song differently. Some some people, or some songs, one person is playing drums versus guitar or whatever. Conor plays drums on a couple songs. Jim James plays drums on a couple songs. Sometimes they're all just literally sitting around a piano and singing. So I think it took a bit of work to make the album gel, but Mike is very proud of the fact that it doesn't sound like lopsided or jerky at the end. And sometimes he said he's heard fans say, like, when they listen, they can't even tell which vocalist is singing which parts, which he thinks is a very good thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can totally see that, because like this album could have easily been like each songwriter like writes a song, and then basically the other folks are featured artists, which was like 0% the intention here, and obviously not at all how it turned out for the most part. I think there are some songs on here that and this is obviously recency bias a little bit too, where I'm like, oh, this is a Bright Eyes song. This would be a Bright Eyes song if it had just been Conor and Mike. But I think by and large, yeah, I get that vibe of like, this feels like a band of people in a room, despite the fact that it is 3 very distinct songwriters, and Mike Mogis gluing them all together.
Yeah, so my feeling about that is, if they had hired a rhythm section and gone in as 3 singer-songwriters with a bassist and a drummer and a keyboard player separately, like, you might have ended up with the kind of record you're describing, where this feels like 3 different singer-songwriters. It feels more like a split EP or, a split album or whatever than it does a band. And right. I think that what is magical about this album is that it really is the 4 of them. No one else is credited. They are all talented enough to play every different instrument, sing all the harmonies. There's actually, in one of the interviews, Conor talks about how Jim James and M. Ward are just like magicians with harmonies, and he's like, I always sang lead my entire life. I don't know anything about harmonies, and so it's like I had to learn. It works. And so I think, like I said, part of the magic of this album is that there's really no one else in the room, and like I said, Mike Mogis as a producer and also performer on the album, he is able to, like you said, kind of glue everything together in a way that makes it sonically consistent, and that makes it feel like a band.
Yeah, it's really cool how that all works out, and how we got America's favorite rhythm section out of it. Sorry, that was my favorite running gag.
It was really funny in that one interview. How do you think it stacks up to the other supergroup that we've covered, which is Boy Genius?
Well, okay, now now you're asking me. I in a lot of ways I get similar vibes for a lot of reasons. I will say that often um Boy Genius feels a little more like somebody brought a song and it is featuring the other two people in the band
Totally
more
agree.
often than I think this album does.
Yeah.
And that's not to disparage that band at all. I am on record as loving that band and the records that they put out. God, I hope they make another one. We'll see. Anyway, I have a lot more fondness for Boy Genius than I do for this band. So I'm gonna try not to cloud my statements with that. But I think that is the kind of big standout here is that there are more occasions where we end up with less of a band feeling and more of a solo songwriter who has their friends on their record, on the Boy Genius record. And here it feels often more like a band thing. And again, there are times where I'm kind of sitting with it and I'm like, this. I mean, we'll get into the individual tracks eventually, but A Man Named Truth is literally a Bright Eyes song. It was like fully more or less made when it came into the studio. Like obviously arrangement stuff happened in the studio, but like not a lot changed from that video that's floating around the internet of them playing it the day it was written.
Yeah, on the Casadega tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I generally agree. I think, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I don't think that any of these Monsters of Folk songs are as good as really anything that I've heard from these artists on their other records.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a function of like this comes at a prolific time for all of them, and their best stuff was on the albums they had just put out with their own bands, or what it is. If there's a good way to explain that, or if it's just I don't totally vibe with the songs or whatever it is. And I think that's like not a problem I have with the Boy Genius album. I think that album has spectacular songs from all three primary songwriters. And again, that's not to say this is a bad album. I find it enjoyable, but I think it has high expectations because of who's in it, and it sets a high bar for itself that I think it rarely touches. But we can get into the songs to go into that in detail.
Yeah, a thing I think I kind of arrived at for myself at the end of listening to this a few times was that ideally in a situation like this you end up with something that's greater than the sum of its parts. I feel like in a lot of ways, and again, I don't want to say this to sound disparaging at all, because I do enjoy a lot of these songs quite a bit, and they obviously wouldn't exist outside of this context for the most part. I feel like in many ways, Monsters of Folk is kind of equal to the sum of its parts for the most part, rather than like kind of taking it to that next level, which like it feels like the expectation going in was some dudes who wanted to make music together got in a room and made some music together, and they had a great time doing it, and maybe that's all that matters.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. It obviously seems like it was a fun thing for all of them to do, and everyone needs to do something that's really fun sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And like we talked about this before with like, Conor rarely is in a situation where he is not kind of the driving force behind like getting a song created. So like this is a newer thing for him at this point in his career. I don't really I assume that's kind of the case with Jim and M. Ward, but maybe not. I don't know. I haven't done deep dives on their career, so.
Yeah, I think that is I think they are able to overcome the ego stuff that you would typically associate with a supergroup like this, and they do it pretty well.
Yeah, definitely.
So this album opens with "Dear God, Sincerely, Monsters of Folk," which is a kind of dreamy sort of keyboard drum machine driven song. Not at all what I expected this album to sound like.
Nope.
That it was kind of assembled from a drum loop and has, I don't know if there's harp or there's all kinds of stuff going on in this song. I think it's Jim James singing lead on a lot of this one with some M Ward too. I sometimes do have like truly have trouble distinguishing their voices, even though like M Ward clearly has this very kind of pure angelic voice, and Jim James is a very textured voice. But I think they like meet in the middle at times on this album, especially on this song. What do you think of this as an opener?
Yeah, it is very odd to open with this song in that there's nothing else on this album that sounds anything like this. And I like it. This song is great. I think in one of the interviews, Mike Mogis was like, "This is my daughter's favorite song on the record, and she asks me to throw it on all the time." And I think that's beautiful. It's really catchy. I love that heart part that kind of blazes through it. But like going in, like thinking, framing this in my head as like a folk project, like even though the name is tongue in cheek, like I can't help but feel like I'm being set up for something folksy. This is folksy in the same way that like most Bon Iver songs are folksy, in that it's not at all. But
Bon Iver's a great comp.
I can the other comparison that I drew, like the first time I kind of dove into the song, I was like, this sounds a little bit like a Gorillaz song. Specifically because of the way that like the rhythm and strings are working together. That's way more of a stretch than the Bon Iver comparison, but it was my first thought, so I figured it was worth mentioning. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like this one, this is a good like showcase of each singer's like both kind of songwriting style, and like to the extent that you can distinguish several of their voices, like they're kind of like what they're going for in the context of this band, because everybody does get a verse on this one as far as I can tell.
I don't think Conor sings any lead on this song.
Oh, I could have sworn he was I thought on the verse where the one where there's that line, and then I'm back behind the glass again, I thought that was Conor.
Okay, I'll have to listen again. I truly was like, and again, this is the Mike Mogis thing that he's saying. It's like sometimes you can't tell who's singing which part, and that's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, well, that was the thing, because the second verse, at first I was like, oh, that's Conor, but like weirdly smooth, and then got to the later verse, and I was like, never mind, that's got to be Conor, and now I'm really not sure. So
yeah,
totally valid.
Yeah, lyrically, it's kind of a contemplation of like the problem of evil. If there is a God, if God is present, or if your love's still around, why do we suffer? Why is there still evil in the world? Which is as much of an overarching theme as there is to this album.
Yeah,
and it is hard when you've got three different songwriters bringing stuff to the table. I think to feel like there's a real concept to the album, which again I think is maybe something that I kind of struggle with on this one, that it feels thematically a little all over the place. But the bookends of this album do kind of, they're building up something with coming to terms with the idea of God and the world, and how you should respond to that.
Yeah, I feel like it is a loose theme throughout the album, and a lot, like, not on every single song, but I feel like a lot of songs deal with the amount of control one has in their life, and how much you either own that or relinquish that to whatever powers that be. But yeah, I think I agree with you that that's kind of like the closest thing I can think of to a running theme, and insofar that that's the case, this makes perfect sense as an opener. I also have no idea where the hell else it would go on this album.
Yeah, for sure. Song was notably sampled by The Roots on How I Got Over, which is a song called Dear God 2.0, which is, basically just uses kind of the choruses of the song with with Roots verses in between them. It's a very cool, it's not... I guess it's just a sample. Like, I don't think the Monsters of Folk collaborated on it at all, but it's a very cool Roots song.
Yeah, reading up on it, it was unclear whether or not like it was a full on collab. It sounds like it was to some degree or another. There might have been like some like, insofar that like knobs were being tweaked, like kind of remixing of like the sound of the actual
maybe
sample.
Mike gave him a different mix or an extended version or something to use,
or just like gave them full on stems and just like let them have at it. I think Dear God 2.0 is a like really stellar song. The Roots are the greatest to ever do it, so that's not that surprising.
Yeah.
I guess they had previously done that with a, let me double check my notes here, a Cody Chestnut song on Phrenology. They did the Seed 2.0 sampling Cody's song The Seed, which is, I think that's cool to like kind of have this running career thing where a song like kind of speaks to you in a way that you're like, oh yeah, no, I want to base an entire like thing on this album on this song. Also, I sent you a text about this earlier, but flows real nicely into the next song on the record, and I was like, man, this song's really long. Oh no, we've moved on. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I was wondering why I wasn't hearing the sample anymore.
Yeah, it's great. We should do a Roots series.
100%.
Next up on the album is Say Please. I think this is a Conor song. Another one that I'm like, is that Jim singing? Is it Conor singing? But this is more of a rocker. A song that they say is about how basically everybody needs help sometimes. And it's kind of about connecting through everyone getting lost in their own fog and kind of needing to reach out to other people to kind of make your way in the world. I think this is a really great song.
It really is. I enjoy it quite a bit. Which, you know, not surprising given the subject matter. Like it's a song that makes me feel good in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it really is, which like we've talked about is always notable when there's a Conor Oberst adjacent song that is specifically structured or composed to make you feel good. He doesn't do that a lot, and you notice it. The great guitar solo in this. I don't know if that's Mike playing the guitar solo, whatever it is. I love it.
Yeah, not a clue, but it's a very good solo for real.
Yeah. Also has a bit of a twist on the classic Bright Eyes idea of sorrow is pleasure if you want it instead. There's that line, everyone gets dark and the worst part is the way those thoughts can please you, personality like a split screen, which I really liked as far as like one kind of lyrical call out in the song.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like just the kind of refrain like of asking someone to ask for help is just like a really nice sentiment in a way that's like not saccharine at all, especially given the remaining context of the lyrics.
Yeah, and it feels again sort of thematically of a piece with this idea of like forming a super group of sorts. You
Yeah.
can tie it to that in a way. Did you watch the music video for this one?
I did. This is the one where like they're in the army, right?
Well, I guess they're like
I guess,
dressed as soldiers
mark?
in the first scene, and then they walk to a camp where Conor is like roller skating and playing guitar, and they just play in like an old timey roller rink. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. Because I definitely expected it to go a different direction.
Yeah, I was thinking it was going to be like the Ghost of You or whatever.
Yep, that was my exact thought.
But yeah, so it's the one kind of quote unquote real music video from this album that isn't basically just like a performance.
Yeah, there's I forget which one has the never mind. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Next up is Whole Lotta Losing, which is kind of a bluesy, rootsy, riffy song, which I think M Ward singing lead. I'm sure I'm gonna be like totally wrong about some of these, but this one I feel like is more notable for its groove that kind of doesn't sound like anything else on the record. What do you think of this one?
I think this one's a lot of fun. Like it's very like, yeah, like you said, like bluesy, like rock and roll tinged. I really like this song a lot. I also like this song has one of my favorite lines in it, which is losing leaves in every season, which gets repeated a couple of times on this song, and I'm like, that's a good image. I love that.
Yeah, that is good. This idea that you can't ever like fully get back to growth. Like you're always you're always in the twilight of some part of your life.
Yeah. This is one of the many songs on this record that has and again, this is probably me noticing this out of a function of coming out of a bunch of Bright Eyes records. A lot of repetition on this song. Like that full like first verse chorus pair happens like 3 times, I want to say, on this sub 3 minute song. not a bad thing. Like that's a very rock and roll blues thing to do, and like it changes up over time a little bit, but just very noticeable to get so much repetition in such a short song.
Yeah, it is very much a contrast to something like this could never be a Bright Eyes song.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Unlike the next song, Temescal, which is very much a Conor-led, Conor-written song, which feels very connected to both some of the ideas on Casadega and the People's Key, like, kind of fits nicely between them, as well as a lot of what Conor was doing on his self-titled solo album right around this time.
Yeah, because like this Temescal is like specifically a like cleansing practice where you basically sit in what's effectively a sauna for hours on end to kind of literally physically cleanse yourself and spiritually too. But we literally just had a song called Cleansing Song come out not long before this.
Yeah, I mean, this one has a little more like, obviously it's a little more set in Mayan civilization. They talk about the I guess the ruins, but talking about the Mayans stole tomorrow and hid it underground. I think it's kind of an interesting image.
Especially since we're like nearing 2012 at this point and the supposed end of the world, because that's when that calendar ends.
Right. But I like this idea. There is, we're talking about the ideas of sort of God and that are throughout the album, and there is this idea in the song, from another time when God was on our side, when Earth wasn't so angry, when God was on our side, and that's the kind of a thing that sort of hangs over the song.
Yeah, and like that can be taken any way you want to. Like, are we looking at this from maybe more of a humanist standpoint, where like it's not that God has abandoned us, it's that we have kind of abandoned ourselves or whatever. There's also references to UFOs on this song, so Lord knows where that fits in.
Yeah.
Or sorry, OVNY or
right, the Spanish
the
version
Spanish.
of UFO.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I think if I'm going into this album after Casadega as a fan, I'm ready for that's my favorite Conor writing. I feel like I could see like, oh, here's the first like real Conor led song on this, and I could see it being a little disappointing, even though I think there's good stuff in it.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid song overall.
Yeah, there's a music video they released for this, which is kind of one of those live in studio takes, but with M. Ward singing most of the lead parts.
Yeah,
I think I don't know that I prefer him singing it, but it gives the song a very different texture.
It really does. I do like that version quite a bit.
Yeah, I do too. It just like they would do this live too, where they would just kind of switch off who sang which songs and kind of see what worked best. It's a thing that I think few other bands could pull off in the way that they do.
Yeah, for sure. And like, obviously it raises, fun questions about, canonical versions of songs and whether or not a recording is in fact the most important version of a given song, but whatever, who cares?
Yeah. After that is The Right Place. This is a Jim James song, has a real relaxed kind of folky jam sound. I think this is kind of another, the repetition, the choruses work really well. I think it's a pretty good hook. What do you think of this one?
I like this one quite a bit. I do love the trick that we've been talking about a lot lately of like we get this chorus that just like slightly switches every single time we hit it. Like the first chorus we get the do you like question statements, then we get to if you like declarative statements, and then we end with a both a turn in perspective and just kind of a like directly declarative statement type thing about things that I am doing and what I like. And I think that's super neat that the whole song is framed in that way and like kind of goes through that journey.
Yeah. I would call out I guess what's labeled as verse 2 on Genius, this idea that is this right? Is this right? Come on, God, answer tonight. Is there some fee you'll charge me for doing what you thought I might? Which is a real great kind of folk line, which is dealing with some of the same ideas in the first song of like, am I destined to behave the way that I am behaving? Will I actually suffer are there actually any consequences if God has planned how everything is going to play out?
Yeah, well, and I mean this song also like kind of raises other moral questions of like, do the things I take for granted does the suffering behind those actually matter? Because you get that whole you get that verse about elephants and how we need piano keys. Which,
Right.
as always, we get some fun word painting where the second we get off the words piano keys, there's some piano, which is great.
You can't resist it. You have to do it.
You gotta do it.
But yeah, no, I like this one. I think I would say it's another probably highlight of the album for me.
Definitely, yeah, I agree.
Next up is Baby Boomer. I think it's Conor and M Ward trading off lines. And really, they all kind of trade off lines in this song. And less we're all going to take a verse, and more as we're all each going to take a line and jump around.
Yeah.
This got kind of a cool little shuffle sounding song. Otherwise, I don't, this one was a real standout to me. But what about you?
Yeah, I don't know that this is a huge standout to me. I do like that this is the first time that we get kind of line trading instead of verse trading. I like some of the wordplay in this song. Early on, we get the "I would buy a censorship" line, which in and of itself feels pun adjacent.
Yeah,
and also we keep mentioning borders in relation to books, and that like hurts my brain a little bit because I know that we are referring to borders as in the fake things around states and nations and whatnot.
Not the Barnes and Noble competitors.
Not the Barnes and Noble
the time
competitor.
that this album was released.
That was where I saw a lot of My Morning Jacket albums when trying to look for a My Chemical Romance album back in the day, which is I think why I didn't listen to that band for a long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, we get that line, and then like later on in the song, we get clean the photos up a little, censor the ship out of it, which on its own is also kind of punny because like clearly we're like skirting around censor the shit out of it, which is kind of hilarious. Except the song doesn't seem like it's supposed to be that funny, so I don't know if that really works.
Yeah, I mean, I think the censor the ship thing is more of a play on the like the pirate ship from a couple lines earlier.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
sort of also a play on the idea of charge the public for the overhead of 1492. This idea that like we whitewashed American history to make ourselves seem like the good guys.
Yeah, exactly. Like this whole song is about like, or it feels to me like it's about people doing things that they feel are altruistic even though they are objectively horrifying and bad.
Right, yeah. And then trying to like rewrite the narrative in their favor.
Yeah, exactly.
After that is Man Named Truth, which is, as we've kind of mentioned before, a song that Conor had written on the Casadega tour with Bright Eyes, performed on that tour, and then brought to this project. This is a song about heroin addiction, kind of following a protagonist as he tries to not fall victim to his addiction, to his demons. What do you think of this one?
I like this song. I don't think it's like incredible by any means, but it's very catchy. It does have a lot of repetition for what is effectively a Bright Eyes song. I did look up, or I attempted to look up whether or not like Aztec Gold is a like unknown heroin strain or something like that, because I don't know anything about drugs, except for what I read in Jeff Rickley's book, and several like beat folks novels. And what I came up with was a review that called this the by and far away worst song on the album, which I definitely don't agree with. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is a weirdly like kind of fun. Features a lot of like kind of hallmarks of like Conor lyricism. I specifically like the fell in love with identical twins. They lived 34 summers between the two of them. Someone on Genius points out, I think correctly, that this is probably in reference to the same person who, has been met at two radically different points in their life. Which I think is a cool way of putting that.
Yeah. This is not literally about falling in love with 17-year-olds.
God, I hope not.
Yeah, no, I think that the metaphorical interpretation of that makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
No, in terms of like the repetition, I think that maybe is a reason this became a Monsters of Folk song and not stayed as a Bright Eyes song, is that it
Yeah.
is using that kind of folk trope of like kind of hammering one line into your head and making you think about it, and how it relates to, the verses that change.
Yeah.
After that is Good Way, which is, I think, a Jim James song. Again, I'm couching all of this in some uncertainty because I feel like I have lost the ability to know who is who on this album sometimes.
Yeah, well, and even if you did know who, like, even if it was easy to identify, like, who the quote unquote lead singer on a song is, like, that doesn't mean they wrote it. Like, that could have
Yeah.
gotten traded around any number of times in the studio.
Yep. I really like kind of the guitar and keyboard stuff that's going on in the song, especially in the kind of the middle. It's not a super long song. It's, kind of like more of a little bit of an, not quite an interlude, but kind of, that ends with this kind of long spoken word part, which is about, I guess, communing with nature or something. There's some kind of cool stuff in it, but it's, again, not a favorite.
Yeah, same. Like, it feels like it's gentle, but it's like kind of upbeat. I like the like little breaks between like the verses and the outro where like it gets kind of cacophonous. The spoken word outro does nothing for me. I'm sorry. Like, I feel like I'm usually down for that, but it doesn't work for me here very well.
Yeah, I liked what is it? We'll return to the human world with new skills and a new perspective. It's a really good phrase that's in there.
That's good. Yeah, for sure.
Next up is Ahead of the Curve, another Conor song. This one is like obviously his wordplay, his kind of his signature songwriting and ideas that he's interested in. Very much a song about movement and transition and starting anew in a new place.
Yeah, I basically wrote down like, yeah, this is straight up like this could be a Bright Eyes song.
Yeah, or it could very much be on the Mystic Valley Band album or something like that.
For sure, yeah. But like that said, like we tie back to like we do a lot of like kind of directional references on this record, like, naturally, like a folk band's gonna talk about traveling west or whatever. But we like, much like on a Man Called Truth, we get like some kind of directional confusion going on, which naturally is the sign that like something's gone wrong. That being the "can't tell north from south" lyric there. Which again, like, kind of feels very much like a Conor thing as opposed to anybody else in this band.
Yeah, and there's like this is another one with that has kind of a bit of optimism to it, which I know we said is full of a lot of Conor's hallmark ideas, but the similar to, which song were we talking about that was to Say Please, like there's a I was thinking, look at how the song ends with this: I'm still hoping for a change of heart and a place to start. Like there's there is a real hope that this travel, this even if you feel kind of directionless, you might find something in it.
Yeah, definitely. I think another like big standout line for me, like kind of contrasting that like more hopeful ending, is the "I'm not carefree, no, I'm free to care, I just never do," which is like very classic Conor lyricism, but it still gets me every time.
Yeah, that was him even if you weren't hearing him sing it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that probably is my favorite line in the song too.
Yeah.
After that is Slow Down Joe, which is, I believe, an M Word lead. This is a real spacious, dreamy song, the closest thing you get to the opening track. This feels like a Mike Mogis showcase, I think. Just he's doing a ton on the arrangement here.
Yeah, definitely. Like, this song is, I wrote terminally mellow out the gate, and like the way that Mike like works with the arrangements on the song like really makes it a much better song than it otherwise could have been.
Yeah, there's a reference to an AJ on the song, which I don't know if it is the AJ Mogis, Mike's brother.
Yeah.
I couldn't really find much, sort of breaking down the lyrics of this one.
No, there's not a lot at all, except for the literally the only annotated thing on Genius is about it ain't by poking out your eyes, because somebody will catch every Bible reference on any given song. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, even your mama said you don't want to see you spent at 25 is like a good evocative lyric too.
Yeah, that one's real good.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like kind of maybe about trying to like confront someone about addiction or something like that.
Yeah. But musically, I do kind of love, even though they're maybe a little cheesy. I love the like big ol' harmonies that you get on the Slow Down Joe, and also the like big harmonies that happen on the last verse. I just think that's a very nice touch to this otherwise like kind of low key song.
Yeah, I agree. Next up is Losing Your Head, which is, I think, another Jim James one. It's also one notably that Conor Oberst plays drums on, something that he hadn't really done, I don't think, since the very early Bright Eyes days.
Yep.
I don't know. I feel like I have a ton to say about this song. There's a handful in the middle of this record that I'm just like, okay, yep, that's another one.
Yeah. Yeah, this one, like, this feels like it's maybe supposed to be a little goofy. Like, there's some weird production stuff on this one. There's that guitar part that's happening in, like, the background of the entire song that is just, like, I think somebody just, like, wailing on a chord with a wah pedal, Kirk Hammett style.
Yeah.
But just, like, steadily doing that the entire runtime of the song, and I don't know why. Like, usually you would cut that out at some point, but like the third time I listened to it, I was like, I'm gonna just focus on that and see if it ever drops out, and I don't think it does. But I don't know, like a couple of like notable lyric things that I liked. I did like the bit about heaving on the boulder to move it an inch, and then like a line later saying, "I think I'm getting bolder." Like, again, like borderline cheesy, but I think it's good. But yeah, like, as the title suggests, this feels like a song about, escapism in all of its forms, like avoiding dealing with your own shit at all costs. So, which classic material for this series.
Right, or feeling like you can only exist if you're going crazy. Like, it's the only way you feel alive.
Right.
After that is Magic Marker, which is this another Jim James one? I really don't know. I should stop guessing.
No, I think you're right about that one. I think that was actually like brought up in one of the interviews.
Yeah. It's a much sparser arrangement, largely just vocals and guitar with some full band stuff coming in later. Really nice acoustic guitar solo in this one. A song I think is kind of about the world feeling unfamiliar as you age, which, I mean, what are these guys all in their, late 20s to late 30s at this point? So I kind of feel that.
Yeah. I don't need the there's something sweet waiting in the center taste and see, followed by how many licks does it take to get bit.
I mean, that's the playful, like, let's co-opt an advertising slogan and try to make something profound out of it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. That does nothing for me, but I do, like, musically I do really love this song, and I think, like, broadly the themes of the song do get to me as a person in kind of that situation.
Yeah. I don't have a ton more to say about this one either. I think from here on, like after this song, when you start from Map of the World, I think the last 3 songs on this album are phenomenal. Is where
they are very good.
It clicks back into place as like, okay, this is what this band can do. So Map of the World is another Conor song. Again, maybe when he may have played live on like a solo tour or something like that. But I think it's a similar idea to kind of what I said about the last song, that like you're getting older and trying to take stock of where you've been, what you've done, and feeling like you haven't lived enough, haven't gone enough places, and at the same time the world kind of doesn't make sense to you anymore.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I kind of read it as a, like, this feels like a kind of long form interpretation of the phrase, no matter where you go, there you are, or whatever the actual, like, tropey phrase is. It feels like there's a lot of that in this song too, which makes sense in that context.
Yeah, and again, similar ideas to what Conor was playing with in Ahead of the Curve. It's like kill the shadow of yesterday, clean shirt, clean pants, clean slate, second chance.
Yeah.
You're going by another name, another like Bright Eyes idea. It's room I'm renovating. It's a name I'm going to change.
Yeah, definitely something that we've explored before, but differently.
Yeah. I think it's the best Conor song on the album by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right about that one. It is interesting that Mike mentions in one of the interviews that this is like a sitting around in a circle on the floor type song. I think that might have been like I think this was the only time that like that kind of technique worked at all. But it sounds like that outro like also like came up really really organically, like that huge outro that happens.
Yeah.
That I like a whole lot.
Yeah, it's a good one. This is if I was just gonna point someone to one song on this album, I think it would probably be this one.
I think that's not a bad call.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm Conor biased, but
Sure.
yeah.
I
Next up
honestly
is
think any of these last three would be a good pick for that.
yeah. I mean, it really does. I think it really ends with each of their best contributions to the album because this is the Sandman, the Brakeman, the Sandman, the Brakeman, and me is M Ward with a very bare arrangement, just him and a guitar, some backing vocals from the other guys, just a little bit of synth. Mike talked about in an interview that they basically used the elements of M Ward's original demo, which is not something they did very much on this album, if at all, other than this song. But they said that it just was such a perfect demo that they felt like there wasn't much they could add to it.
Yeah, I believe Mike's direct quote was, "How can we beat that?"
Yeah. I think it's interesting to have another Conor Oberst adjacent song about a brakeman and using the idea of trains and the brakeman as the drivers of fate and as a way to think about destiny and control, so closely after if the brakeman turns my way.
Yeah, that was very striking to me, especially given that this is not like strictly speaking a Conor song.
Right.
Which is cool. Like it's cool. It's cool to have that thematic tie across projects and across people. I mean, when I was talking earlier about like kind of the loose themes of like, how much do you take or relinquish control of the things in your life, like this is definitely more about the latter, which like is also a little bit about, or like what when the brakeman comes my way is about too, so like makes perfect sense.
Yeah. If the brakeman comes my way, it makes it sound like he's gonna attack you.
He's the brakeman. He's gonna kick my ass.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very very good song.
Yeah.
The music video that they released for this is again one of those sort of live in studio sessions, or sort of like an alternate take, I guess, where Jim is singing lead on it. Which is interesting, but I think this is the rare case where I think I don't know if I've said this before. I don't like M Ward's voice that much. I think it's a little too pristine for me. But on this song in particular, he just nails it. It sounds perfect.
Everything melts really well on this song.
Yeah. And then we get to the closing track, his master's voice, which is this is Jim James with a song that I think is the single best piece of songwriting on this album. As much as I love Conor Oberst, I don't think anything he brought to this comes anywhere close to this. I think there's just a ton of depth to this, and it gets into these ideas about authority, about the word of God, and about, when you're acting, on whose behalf are you acting, and whether you're, a prophet or a preacher or a commanding officer, like who actually is guiding your actions, and then sort of who is actually, at the very end of your life, who do you actually think about, who's actually there for you.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it there. There's the songwriting itself on this song is just pretty impeccable, honestly. Like we've got kind of the framing device of Muhammad and Christ apparently hanging out, which is cool. But that kind of sandwiches this song more or less, and then in the middle we have this kind of like these as we've often said on this series, kind of vignettes about like who are you answering to, whose voice do you hear at these like pivotal points in your life. And like the switch from he hears his master's voice to he sees his inner child, he hears his mother's voice is really, really striking as a result.
Yeah, it is a sort of breaking down the songs on this album that have contemplated God and fate and faith, and it is saying that like ultimately it's the people who you're closest to that matter in the end.
Yeah.
The end of the song, Mike Mogis kind of gets to go off and like warp everything, and the album ends in a very Bright Eyesy way, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean it's a good, it may I like I said, I don't love this album as a whole, but it ends so strong that I like every time I play it, I end up feeling pretty good about it. As the last track winds down.
Yeah, it definitely ends on an incredibly high note.
Yeah, and then they toured this record. They did. There's a lot of videos you can watch out there. The Austin City Limits one is awesome. Of them, you can see what they're doing, trading off parts and trading off instruments. They brought in, like we mentioned, they brought in Will Johnson as a touring drummer, and then in 2012 they went back into the studio to try to make a second record. And I don't know if they had like ever talked about this, if people knew that there was other stuff floating, or the idea to do another Monsters of Folk thing was floating around. But then as of, what was it, last year, they released a 15-year anniversary deluxe edition of the album with 5 songs that were recorded in 2012 for sessions intended for a second album. Those songs, I think, do feature Will Johnson drumming, and they're pretty distinct from the album, I think. Any of these in particular?
Agree.
Yeah, any of these in particular you want to call out or talk about?
Let's see. Well, I definitely want to call out the last track, Disappeared, which is everybody doing their best Bruce Springsteen impression, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say it reminded me a lot of The Killers' more Americana-leaning
Yes.
stuff, which is, again, them doing their best Bruce Springsteen as well.
like everybody does at some point in their life.
Yeah, and that one gets into some more like sort of, I guess, some more Conor's lyrical ideas. I think it's about a soldier going AWOL. I couldn't tell. That's the lyrics for these, I don't think were ever published anywhere as far as I could find. So I was trying to like transcribe them for Genius a little bit, all the parts that were missing.
Oh yeah, I was kind of wondering why the the lyrics section for this on Genius looked the way it did, but that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I definitely agree with that. Like it and again, it's a very Bruce thing to sing about, so it totally makes sense in the style that it's being presented in. That I'm pretty sure that song has a rainbow machine happening at the beginning, by the way.
Yeah.
For anybody who cares about guitar pedals out there.
If that was even out at that time, I don't actually know. But it's doing something similar.
2012, maybe. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I think my favorite song in this collection of songs, though, is Museum Guard.
Same.
I like that one a whole lot. I did definitely mark it as this might just be a Bright Eyes song. I'm not sure. Kind of little. I mean, obviously, Bright Eyes wasn't happening at this point, but.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is that to me that song feels like it is a direct response to Bright Eyes kind of having wound down officially by this point in 2012, and thinking about how their last album in particular, and even their last 2 albums, weren't super well received, because it's a song about sort of like looking back on your life's work and saying like, I put all this stuff out there and here I am just, trying to pretend or whatever it is. Like, can you let go of the title that you're too old to defend, of like, realizing that maybe your best work is behind you. I think it's a very poignant song, and it makes sense that he would be writing about this idea of feeling like, oh, am I past my prime? Do I have anything left in the tank at this point?
Yeah, definitely. I really love the simile that the title comes out of, the like masterworks of art to the Museum Guard. Such a really great way of talking about art and your relationship to it.
Right, and if you see it every day, is it still as beautiful?
Exactly, especially, depending on your like relationship to it going in. Like, did you care about art in the first place? Who can say? Does that relationship change over time? Yeah, probably. But musically, one of my favorite things on this song is the way that the tempo changes on the "Tell me where to find a friend" and the "I keep trying to pretend" lines. That's so fucking cool.
Yeah. I mean, they do a big like tempo tone time shift in Sweet Silence too. You like switch to 6/8 in the middle of the song and a different vocalist
Yeah.
takes over. I really think these songs are like, like 4 of the 5 best Monsters of Folk songs. I would love to hear them finish this album one day. I'm sure they won't since they decided to release this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, whether it's having a quote unquote real drummer playing with them or whatever it is, they found something special in these 2012 sessions, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like these are, I would argue like some of my, if we're talking about the two things as like discrete collections of songs, like I would argue that this is just like by and large more consistently great.
Yeah, it's just more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that really is all that Monsters of Folk did. Here's a thought experiment for you.
Sure.
If they were going to make another album and add a 5th or I guess 6th monster with Will Johnson, who would you add to this group to add a different flavor?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Because I have an answer. I have one that I think
is your answer Jason Isbell?
No, although I mean, sure, I would love that too.
I think that would be sick, but that seems like a little too much of a reach, especially like scene wise. But I think he'd be down.
Oh, maybe, probably. Well, especially with someone Centromatic in there.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say Jenny Lewis. I think her voice would
would
be a fascinating addition to this band, and her songwriting is adjacent, but a slightly different flavor in a way that I think each of these guys are slightly different flavors from each other while being in the same scene. I think that would be a really neat. And obviously she has history with Mike Mogis too as a producer, and so yeah, I think that would be a really neat hypothetical there.
That would be really cool, and I would love that. And now I really want it to happen.
Yeah, me too. It seems unlikely, but
yeah, I know, but we can dream.
We can dream for our fantasy band draft.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Anything else on Monsters of Folk before we end it?
No, I'm glad I spent some time with these songs because I really don't feel like I gave this album its due back in the day. And like far from my favorite thing we've talked about in this series, but still like there's some real gold here, which is cool to discover.
Definitely. You got a random recommendation for this week?
I do. So I'm once again going to talk about a thing that I've only like partially finished, but I feel pretty confident in where it's going. But this week I'm going to recommend a like relatively old at this point book called A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. I only knew kind of like the synopsis, which was just about, a guy who used to be in a band who is now a like record producer, record exec, and like the interconnectedness of all of our lives and stuff like that. So I didn't know a lot going into this book, except that like it maybe gets a little bit weird. And it does. Every single chapter is a full on, like, not full on necessarily, like there's usually like some connecting thread between any given two chapters, but we get kind of a perspective switch. We focus on a different character. Sometimes we do actually get a perspective shift, like there are chapters that are written in the third person, some that are written in first person, and notably one that is second person until the very end when it switches to first person. And it's just really cool. I'm listening to this as an audiobook, which is wild because apparently one of the chapters, and I think I know which one it is at this point, is actually a PowerPoint in the book.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how does the PowerPoint chapter function as an audiobook?
So I'm not 100% sure if I've actually passed that one, but if I have, I think it worked out all right. I'm gonna go to Perpetual, the used bookstore near me, and see if I can find a like cheap copy of this, or just like peek in it and see which chapter is the PowerPoint chapter. But yeah, like I said, I'm like 3/4 of the way through this book. It's a huge bummer for the most part. And it does the thing that I liked about Long Story Short that I brought up a few weeks ago, where it does a lot of time hopping too. So like stuff happens, you find out about stuff before it happens because like you have a perspective from the future and an event that happened in the past is talked about, and then we shift back to the past before something happened to a character. I just think it's really neat. Like it's a very unique book as far as, my experience of literature has been concerned. So I'm digging it a lot. And I'm only 10, 15 years late on this. Who can say?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal book. I've read it twice, I think.
I will definitely be rereading it after not right after I finish the audiobook, but I'll probably revisit it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, won the Pulitzer Prize too. Great book. Great choice.
Hell yeah. What you got?
I'm going to recommend the album LP1 by Sad Witches, a phenomenal local Chicago band that Pelafina played with last weekend. And this album is the closest thing that I have ever heard to Adventures that is not just Adventures, the band Adventures, a wonderful sort of 90s emo revival band featuring members of Code Orange Kids. But yeah, Sad Witches is like, I guess it's the best way to describe it is, kind of like sort of dreary but upbeat at the same time, emo with some synthesizers and just great melodies. This is just a wonderful album. Came out, I think, 2024. Highly recommend checking this one out and catching a show if you're in the Chicago area.
Yeah, we love Sad Witches. They are great.
All right, that is it for this week. Next week we'll be back talking about another Conor Oberst project with one album, which is Better Oblivion Community Center, which is tie back to our Boy Genius episode, our worst episode from a long time ago. We'll be back for that next week, and in the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram at noisefloorpod, find us on the internet at noisefloorpodcast.com, and send us emails at noisefloorpodcast@gmail.com, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.